What's up guys, welcome to Talking Poodoo, a Star Wars show, where today I am reviewing Star Wars The High Republic Into the Dark by Claudia Gray. In a nutshell, let's get straight to it. What did I think of this book? I thought it was okay. Yeah, just okay. There are three ways of actually talking about this book. There's as a Star Wars book, as a Star Wars The High Republic book more specifically, and as a Star Wars Claudia Gray book. So let's first talk about it as a Star Wars book. It's okay, it's a fun little side adventure in the Star Wars universe, with new characters in new locations. What's the story actually about? Well, a group of Jedi heading to the frontier encounters the Legacy Run incident from the prior book, Light of the Jedi, and they are forced to take refuge in a strange space station, where there are some mysteries that unfold there. And that's the crux of the narrative, basically. Most of this book does take place on that space station. So, that's what I think of it as a Star Wars book. It's okay, it's fun, it's a little bit of a side story. As a Star Wars The High Republic book though, as what's essentially the second Star Wars High Republic book, it's a bit on the disappointing side because it doesn't feel all that important, it doesn't feel all that relevant. So early in this High Republic time frame, we are already getting a side story. One that doesn't really expand on the galaxy, doesn't really expand on the characters or the lore in any real significant way. It kind of feels a little throwaway, a little pointless. Why did this have to be set in the High Republic? There's nothing here besides the link to the Legacy Run incident in the prior book and, of course, the mention of the Nihil. This could have been any time in the Star Wars timeline leading up to the events of like Attack of the Clones. So why did it specifically have to be High Republic? There's nothing saying that it should be that. You could totally imagine it being in another Star Wars time period, which is a little disappointing. Now to think of it as a Claudia Gray Star Wars book though. Claudia Gray, no secret, if you've seen any of my Star Wars stuff before, you know I'm a big fan of her Star Wars works. So this is by far the worst one that she's done. It's not bad by any means. Like I said, it is okay, but it's significantly a step down from anything she's wrote in the past. Simply because it does feel a little irrelevant, a little pointless, just a fun little side story. It's not expanding on things. Whereas a lot of her previous works have been really like expanding on the lore and the franchise as a whole, exploring characters, their backstories and their connections and so on. So this one is disappointing in almost every way, but again, not bad. Now of course there is a bit of a caveat that has to be mentioned, that the High Republic era is a new thing. This is, again, just the second book in that era. So it's hard to tell what is or isn't relevant or important moving forward. But put it this way, I would not be surprised if the characters of this book are never seen or heard from again moving forward. I like the characters, they're not bad characters, they just don't feel overly important in the larger scheme of things. But again, this is a whole new era, whole new time frame. What is important moving forward? We don't really know yet. But we have to imagine the characters and locations and organizations mentioned in the first book are the main ones, whereas these ones are probably just side characters. But anyway, let's ignore its links to other Star Wars stuff, let's ignore its links to the High Republic as a whole, let's talk about this book as a standalone book. It does a good job of setting up the mysteries, it does a good job of establishing the characters. Some of the characters are a little traditional in the Star Wars sense. You have this roguish pilot who may be a little on the illegal side in certain regards. You have these noble, mythical Jedi figures, you have the mystical, not mythical. You've got this eager youngster who wants to make a living for herself and so on. The character types, they're stereotypes in many ways, but the writer Claudia Gray does a good job of actually fleshing them out and making them feel like real people, regardless of, even if they do start off from being archetypes. But the story itself, the mysteries it establishes are really quite interesting to begin with. The fact that this book does take place on an entire space station and it doesn't really get all that boring is quite impressive. There are some mysteries on the space station, including like little signs and symbols written around the place, and the fact that there's loads of plant life all over the place, and Well, why are the Jedi sensing the dark side on the station? Not going to answer all these questions here, because spoilers obviously, but those mysteries are established pretty well. They are then explored in a fairly interesting way. The answers aren't always the most satisfying thing, because without getting into too many specifics, some of the answers are fairly straightforward, and other ones aren't really answered very well. So there's that. But the actual initial mystery that gets you hooked is quite good. So I've already mentioned some of the characters have their archetypes, but she builds on them to make them a little bit more than what you initially think they are. I want to talk about the character of Geode first. So Geode, I think, is a hilarious, fascinating character. Again, not all that unique. We've had characters like this before in Star Wars and in other franchises and forms of media. But Geode is essentially a slab of rock. Yeah, he's an alien apparently, but all we ever see of him is that he's a slab of rock that's just kind of there. The characters are constantly mentioning how he's like going to parties, how he's got all these connections with like gangs and people and so on, and how he never shuts up and does all this and that, but we never see him. From what we see, he's a slab of rock, and it's hilarious. I think Claudia Gray does a good job of making this character very mysterious and interesting and a source of comedic relief in this book. It's really, really good. And I don't think she like ever ruins the gag at all. So there's that. I do like that character. I hope we don't see more of that character, in fact, because I think any more could be a little too much and it could get to be ruining the joke a bit. But let's talk about the Nihil. The Nihil, introduced as the big bads in the previous book, Light of the Jedi, they are basically pirates slash bandits who use hyperspace travel to get their way. They are, again, in this book, they don't play a huge part of this book like they did in the previous one, but they are there, they are the villains here again. One of the criticisms I had of the last book, Light of the Jedi, is that they were just fairly straightforward bandits and pirates, felt a little underwhelming. It felt like maybe the Jedi and the Republic should have had a greater foe to contend with rather than this glorified gang, essentially. Well, this book doesn't change my opinion on that at all. This book actually doubles down on that, in that they are just bandits and pirates. They show up, they want to steal things, they want to cause chaos and havoc, and they're bad guys doing bad things. So it's a little disappointing that that's what the big bad of the High Republic is so far, assuming that they are in fact going to remain the big bad of the High Republic. The reason I say that is that the one thing that I think is really interesting that could and probably will be a key element moving forward in the High Republic is that there's a new villainous type character introduced. Now the problem is, I don't know if this villainous type character is going to just be in this book or if it's going to move on to other books and other stories. But they're called the Drengir. And I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, but who cares, that's how I'm pronouncing it. Not going to say anything about them because that is getting into spoilers, but this new villainous type of character or being or race or whatever is full of potential. They do come across as a little on the stereotypical bad guy kind of thing where they just want to do bad things, but they do feel much more threatening, much more imposing than the Nihil, and it'll be interesting to see if they are going to end up being the big bad, or even if they're going to team up with the Nihil or something. I don't know. It's early days, like I said. Who knows what's going to happen here? Who knows what is significant, what's being hinted at, what's being set up? We'll only know in time. But the Drengir are interesting, but it remains to be seen if they're just going to be in this one or not. So just a few little points I want to get across here before I end this review. Claudia Gray's got this running element in her Star Wars books. In almost every one of them she has discussions of sex. So in itself, that's nothing amazing or impressive or anything like that. But it's interesting because this is Star Wars. And Star Wars is usually, in many ways, very anti-sex. Yes, we know it exists in the Star Wars universe, it has to. But the films, the TV shows, the comic books, all of this stuff really avoids that subject nature because it is a family-friendly franchise. And yet Claudia Gray keeps bringing it up. And these are young adult novels as well. So I don't know exactly what the age frame of these books is, but every now and then she just brings up like a conversation or about sex. And it's interesting. Again, not significant or anything like that. It's not a major theme or plot point, but it is noticeable how she's the one that's really pushing this in little ways and establishing that no, these are real people. And yeah, it's just an interesting note, because I don't think any other novel writers are doing this much. So it's interesting how a franchise owned by Disney that's family friendly, in these books, Claudia Gray is really trying to push that in little ways. But another point that I want to get across is the Jedi, the way that the Jedi are presented in this book. The Jedi are presented in a not so much of like a godlike position like they are sometimes positioned in, but much more as like these are religious monk-like characters. This book does a really good job of establishing that the Jedi are really part of the core worlds. They don't really expand outwards. A lot of people in this galaxy have never seen a Jedi. They don't know what a Jedi is. They don't know what a Jedi does. They actually aren't even entirely sure if Jedi are real. So this book really does a good job of highlighting that and highlighting why that is. And when we do see the Jedi interacting with these people, the Jedi sometimes come across as a little idiotic, let's say, in that the Jedi think they can come in, they can save the galaxy, they'll make everyone and everything a better place or person simply by being there and teaching them their ways and so on. So it's a unique viewpoint here that we get in this book, in that the Jedi come in, they think they can do this, but they can't really. Because why? Why would they be able to do that? And the reason for this is because, well, the Jedi, of course, are these monk-like characters who aren't necessarily idiotic in themselves, but they are venturing out into new worlds, into new locations, into the frontier of this galaxy. So they don't actually know the establishments in these outer worlds. They don't know how things are run, what the organizations are. They still don't know who the Nihil are at this point. So there is this sense that the Jedi are uneducated. They are explorers trying to find things out for themselves as well as teach others about themselves. But that being said, this point, while I do think is interesting, is not fully explored because, again, they are just going to this space station. So we don't get them a sense that they're traveling further into the frontier. We've never actually been to the frontier in any of these books yet. So we don't know how widespread this is going to be. Is this going to be a running theme in them? I think it will be, but it remains to be seen. This is a good establishing point though. But anyway, that's my review of Star Wars The High Republic Into the Dark by Claudia Gray. I'm not going to go into spoilers beyond any of the little things that I pointed out so far, because there's not really a lot to say about this book. It is just a fun little side adventure in the Star Wars canon so far in the High Republic time period. It's disappointing by Claudia Gray standards. It doesn't always look or feel or sound like a Claudia Gray book, because it does feel a little pointless in many ways. It does feel like it's unnecessary. It does feel like it's a side story rather than a pivotal, crucial story. But again, early days of High Republic, who knows what is actually going to be crucial or important moving forward. There might be some elements of this that are very important for all I know, but it just doesn't feel like it at this point. But anyway, it's fun, I enjoyed it. I just don't think I'm going to go back and read it again if I ever do. Not that I've ever went back and read any other Star Wars book again, to be honest, but there are some out there that I would say, yeah, I would read that again. This one, I wouldn't, but I did enjoy my time with it. But anyway, if you've liked this review, thanks for watching all of this, and of course, subscribe to my channel to get more content like this. And follow me on Twitter and Instagram at @the_Grant Burton for all my thoughts and opinions, up to date as I get them. And remember, I also have a video game channel, Games with Grant, where I stream video games, where I post reviews, deep dives, rankings, and so on across all sorts of video game topics. So check that out, Games with Grant on YouTube. Until next time though, thanks for watching.